My name is Amelia Rowe, and I was 33 years old when my family laughed at my dress during my grandmother's will reading, right before the lawyer stopped speaking, looked down at the document in his hand, and froze like he had just discovered a ghost between the lines. The dress was navy blue, long-sleeved, plain, and older than some of the grudges in that room. I had bought it from a thrift store 3 years earlier for $14, and I had worn it to 2 funerals, 1 school award ceremony, and now to the reading of my grandmother's will. It had a tiny pull near the cuff and a button at the back that never sat straight, but it was clean, modest, and the closest thing I owned to proper mourning clothes. My grandmother would not have cared. Evelyn Rowe had never measured grief by fabric. She measured it by who showed up before the funeral when there were pills to sort, sheets to change, meals to cook, and frightened hands to hold in the dark. But my family was very good at caring about how things looked after the hard parts were over. That afternoon, we gathered in the conference room of Barlow and Finch, a law office downtown with frosted glass doors, polished floors, and chairs too expensive to sit in comfortably. My mother arrived in a black designer coat with oversized sunglasses on her head, though we were indoors. My father wore a gray suit and the solemn expression he saved for public situations. My younger sister, Celeste, came in last, wearing a fitted cream dress, pearl earrings, and a black ribbon in her hair, looking less like a grieving granddaughter and more like someone auditioning to inherit a lifestyle. Her husband, Grant, followed her, carrying her purse because she said her manicure was still drying. My Uncle Peter and Aunt Marla sat together near the window, whispering. 2 cousins I barely knew hovered near the coffee station. I was already seated at the far end of the table when Celeste saw me. Her eyes moved from my hair, which I had pinned badly myself, down to the old navy dress, then back up to my face. She did not even try to hide the smile. "Oh, Amelia," she said softly, but not softly enough. "You wore that again?" Aunt Marla coughed into her hand. My cousin Lauren looked down, but I saw her shoulders shake. Celeste slid into the chair across from me and tilted her head with theatrical sympathy. "You could have asked me for something to wear. Grandma had standards." That was the first laugh. Small, controlled, polite enough for a law office, but still laughter. My mother's mouth tightened, not because Celeste had been cruel, but because I had made it possible by showing up looking like myself. "She looks fine," my father said, but he said it the way men say things to end a topic, not because they believe them. Celeste leaned toward Grant. "She looks like she came to clean the office after this." He smiled before remembering he was supposed to be grieving. I sat with my hands folded in my lap and looked at the empty chair at the head of the table, where Mr. Barlow, Grandma's lawyer, had not yet sat down. I told myself not to react. I had practiced not reacting for most of my life. In our family, Celeste was the beautiful one, the promising one, the one my mother said had presence. I was the practical one, the reliable one, the one who could be called at midnight when Grandma fell in the bathroom, then criticized the next morning for having tired eyes. If I defended myself, I was bitter. If I stayed quiet, I was dull. If I succeeded, I was lucky. If I struggled, I was proof that my family had been right about me all along. So I let them laugh at the dress. It was easier than letting them see what the dress meant, that I had spent the last 18 months paying for Grandma's groceries, medicine copays, and home repairs out of my own teacher's salary while Celeste sent flowers once and posted about cherishing every moment online. Grandma Evelyn had been my father's mother, though sometimes I wondered if he remembered that before her death made him an heir. She had lived alone in a white brick house on Juniper Lane, the kind of house that looked ordinary from the street but held a whole family's history inside its walls. My grandfather had built the back porch himself. My father and uncle had carved their initials under the pantry shelf as boys. My sister and I had spent summers there, running barefoot through the garden while Grandma shouted for us not to crush the tomatoes. When we were children, Celeste hated staying overnight because Grandma made us wash dishes and help hang laundry. I loved it. Grandma had a way of making ordinary work feel like a kind of belonging. "A house knows who cares for it," she used to say. "Don't ever think walls are stupid. They remember hands." When I was 17, I wanted to study literature. My parents called it impractical. Celeste wanted to take a gap year in Europe. My parents called it enriching. They paid for her flights, her hostels, her new luggage. I stayed home, worked at a bookstore, and took community college classes at night. Grandma was the only one who noticed the difference. She would leave envelopes in my backpack with $20 bills and notes that said, "For books, not bills." Sometimes I used them for books. Sometimes I used them for gas. Sometimes I used them to buy groceries because my mother had forgotten I was still living at home unless she needed me to drive her somewhere. Years later, when Grandma's health began to fail, everyone said we would share responsibility. That lasted about 10 days. Celeste was too busy planning her wedding. My parents were too tired. Uncle Peter lived 40 minutes away and treated that distance like another country. Aunt Marla said hospitals made her anxious, so it became me. At first, I came twice a week, then every other day, then every day after school. I taught 6th grade English, which meant I spent my days helping children understand metaphors, then spent my evenings helping Grandma remember whether she had taken the small white pill or the round blue one. I changed sheets. I cleaned the refrigerator. I argued with insurance companies. I learned how to lift her from the bathtub without hurting her shoulders. I learned which soup she could keep down after treatments. I learned that people praise caregivers in theory and avoid them in practice because illness is not graceful up close. It smells like antiseptic, old towels, fear, and the chicken broth you keep reheating because the person you love keeps saying maybe later. Celeste visited rarely, but when she did, she made it count for photographs. She would arrive with bakery cupcakes, kiss Grandma on the forehead, move a blanket into better lighting, and take a picture. "Grandma looks so tiny," she once whispered to me in the kitchen, as if Grandma were an accessory that had shrunk. Then she posted the picture with a caption about family being everything. 300 people liked it. I had been awake with Grandma until 4 that morning because she was afraid she would stop breathing if she fell asleep. But no one liked that because no one saw it. Grandma saw it. That was enough, or I told myself it was. In her last month, she grew very quiet. Some afternoons she would sit in her armchair by the window and watch birds move through the hedge. One day she looked at me and said, "You're wearing yourself thin, Millie." No one else called me Millie. "I'm fine," I said. She smiled sadly. That's what women say when they know nobody is coming to help. I wanted to laugh, but I cried instead. She reached for my hand. Her fingers were thin, papery, still warm. "Listen to me. When I'm gone, they'll dress up grief and call it love. Don't let that confuse you." I asked what she meant. She closed her eyes and said, "You'll know." 2 weeks later, she died before sunrise while I was sitting in the chair beside her bed, one hand on her wrist because I had been counting the spaces between breaths. My father arrived 4 hours later. Celeste arrived the next day with a black dress in a garment bag. At the funeral, she cried beautifully. I do not mean that cruelly. Some people cry like breaking glass. Celeste cried like a painting. My mother held her. My father held her. I stood near the casket in my thrift store dress and accepted condolences from neighbors who knew exactly who had been there and exactly who had not. Mrs. Harlan from next door pressed both my hands and whispered, "Your grandmother told me she could sleep because you were in the house." I almost fell apart then. Not during the hymn. Not during the final prayer. That sentence nearly broke me because it was the only true thing anyone said all day. The will reading was scheduled 2 weeks later. I did not want to go. I knew there would be tension because Grandma had owned the Juniper Lane house outright, along with some savings, 2 small rental cottages behind the property, and a collection of antique furniture my mother had admired for years. I did not expect much. Maybe a few books. Maybe the old blue teapot. Maybe the quilt from the guest room. I wanted something that smelled like her cedar closet and laundry soap. I wanted something small enough to keep without starting a war. I should have known Grandma did not plan small when she felt justice was at stake. Mr. Barlow entered the room at 2:06 p.m., carrying a leather folder and wearing the solemn kindness of a man who had seen families become honest only when money forced them to. He was in his late 50s, with silver hair, reading glasses, and a careful way of speaking that made every word sound weighed before release. He introduced himself to those who had not met him, expressed condolences, and sat down at the head of the table. Celeste crossed her legs and adjusted her pearl bracelet. My mother dabbed at dry eyes. My father stared straight ahead. I kept my hands in my lap so no one would see my fingers picking at the loose thread on my cuff. Mr. Barlow began with standard language, full legal name, date of will, confirmation that Grandma had been of sound mind when she signed. He listed small gifts first. My mother received Grandma's wedding china. My father received his father's old pocket watch. Uncle Peter received tools from the garage. Aunt Marla received a set of silver candlesticks. Celeste received Grandma's pearl necklace and $15,000. Celeste's mouth tightened at the amount. She had expected more. I saw it because I was watching her, though she would later claim she had only been emotional. Then Mr. Barlow said, "To my granddaughter Amelia Rose Rowe, I leave my personal journals, my complete library, and the contents of the upstairs blue bedroom." My throat tightened. The blue bedroom, my summer room, the room with the sloped ceiling and the window that stuck in humidity. That would have been enough for me. I looked down before anyone saw my eyes fill. Celeste gave a little sigh, the kind meant to sound amused. "The books make sense," she said. "Amelia always liked dusty things." Another small laugh moved around the table, not from everyone, but enough. My mother whispered, "Celeste." Celeste shrugged. "What? It's true," Mr. Barlow continued. "The remainder of the estate, including the Juniper Lane residence, the 2 rental cottages, the investment accounts, and all residual assets." He paused to turn the page. My father leaned forward. My mother stopped dabbing. Celeste sat very still. "Shall be distributed according to the instructions on the following page." My father exhaled slowly, as if preparing to negotiate with paper. "Before you read that," he said, "I think we all understand Mother's intentions." Mr. Barlow looked up. "Do we?" My father seemed irritated by the question. "She wanted the house kept in the family. Celeste and Grant are planning children. They need space. Amelia is... Well, Amelia lives alone and teaches. She wouldn't know what to do with properties and tenants." There it was, said calmly, like weather. My whole life reduced to a lack of husband and children. Celeste placed a hand over her chest. "Dad, please. I don't want Amelia to feel pushed out." She said this while looking at Mr. Barlow, not at me. "Of course she should have access to Grandma's things. We would never keep her away." Access, like I was a guest in the rooms I had cleaned. My mother nodded quickly. "That's reasonable. Amelia doesn't need the burden. She has always preferred simple living." I looked at her. "Simple living?" She blinked, surprised that I had spoken. "You know what I mean." I did. That was the problem. Mr. Barlow cleared his throat. "Mr. Rowe, I must read the will as written." My father smiled tightly. "Of course. I'm only saying we should not let wording create conflict where the family already knows what makes sense." The lawyer looked down at the document. Mrs. Rowe was also concerned about wording being ignored. My father's smile faded. Mr. Barlow read the next paragraph. "I leave the Juniper Lane residence, the 2 rental cottages, the investment accounts, and the residue of my estate to my granddaughter." He stopped. His eyes moved across the page once, then again. His brows drew together. He leaned closer. For the first time since entering the room, his professional calm broke. He froze. My mother immediately said, "What is it?" Celeste sat forward. "Is there a problem?" Mr. Barlow did not answer right away. He turned back one page, then forward again. He removed his glasses, cleaned them with a cloth, put them back on, and read silently. The room grew tense. Even the cousins by the coffee station stopped whispering. My father's voice sharpened. "Mr. Barlow?" The lawyer looked up slowly, not at my father, at me. "Miss Rowe," he said, "I need to confirm something before I continue." My mouth went dry. "Okay." He looked back at the page. Your legal name is Amelia Rose Rowe. Yes. You have never gone by another legal name? No. Celeste laughed nervously. What does that matter? Mr. Barlow ignored her. And your grandmother sometimes called you Millie? My chest tightened. Yes. Was that used in any official documents? No, just family. He nodded slowly, but his expression did not relax. My father stood halfway from his chair. What is going on? Mr. Barlow turned the document so only he could see it better. The will does not list Amelia once in this paragraph. Celeste's face brightened before she could hide it. Then maybe it lists her twice, Mr. Barlow said. The room went quiet. What? My mother whispered. Mr. Barlow read aloud, carefully now. I leave the Juniper Lane residence, the 2 rental cottages, the investment accounts, and the residue of my estate to my granddaughter Amelia Rose Rowe, known to me as Millie, and to no other person. If any person attempts to interpret this gift as intended for Celeste Rowe or any other family member, let this sentence serve as clarification. I mean Amelia. I mean Millie. I mean the child who held my hand when no one was taking photographs. Silence dropped so heavily that I could hear the old radiator clicking near the wall. My face burned. My hands went numb. Celeste stared at the lawyer as if he had changed the words out of spite. My mother's mouth opened, then closed. My father slowly sat back down. Mr. Barlow continued, voice quieter but steady. Mrs. Rowe added a note in the margin at the time of signing. It was witnessed and initialed. He paused. The note reads, They will try to dress Celeste in my intentions. Do not let them. Celeste made a sharp sound. That is disgusting. My father snapped, Celeste! No, she said, standing. No, I'm not going to sit here and be insulted by a dead woman who clearly wasn't thinking straight. Mr. Barlow's face hardened. Mrs. Rowe was evaluated by her physician 2 weeks before signing this version of the will. She was legally competent. My mother began crying for real now, but her tears were still turned toward Celeste. She loved you, sweetheart. Celeste pointed at me. Apparently not as much as she loved the charity case in the cheap dress. There it was again. The dress. The old dress that had somehow become evidence against me. Something in me that had been bending for years finally stopped bending. I stood. My chair scraped back, louder than I intended. Everyone looked at me. Do you want to know why I wore this dress? I asked. My voice shook at first, then steadied. Because the last time Grandma was well enough to sit outside, she spilled tea on the sleeve and got so upset that she tried to scrub it herself. I told her it didn't matter. She said, Good, then wear it when you need to remember that stains are proof something was lived in. I held up the cuff with the tiny pull. This dress was in her kitchen, in her hospital room, at her funeral, and now here. So laugh if you want, Celeste. But this dress knew her better at the end than your pearls did. Celeste's face went red. Grant touched her elbow. She jerked away. My father stared at the table. My mother whispered, Amelia, that's enough. I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw how many years I had spent obeying that sentence. Enough. Enough truth. Enough pain. Enough self-respect to make others uncomfortable. No, I said. It isn't. Mr. Barlow folded his hands. There is also a letter addressed to Amelia. He removed a sealed envelope from the folder. My name was written across the front in Grandma's careful handwriting. Amelia Rose, my Millie. I took it. The paper trembled slightly between my fingers. Would you like privacy? He asked. My instinct was to say yes. Then I looked at Celeste, at my parents, at the cousins who had laughed, at everyone who had been ready to turn my grandmother's wishes into a family arrangement before the ink had a chance to speak. No, I said. I'll read it here. I opened the envelope. My dearest Millie, if you are reading this in a room full of people who suddenly remember how much they loved me, take a breath before you let them touch your guilt. You were with me when love was inconvenient. You were there when my hands shook too badly to button my blouse. You were there when I was embarrassed, frightened, angry, and unlovely. You never made me feel like a task. That matters more than flowers sent by assistants and photographs taken after the work was done. I know they will say Celeste needs the house because she has plans. I know they will say your life is smaller. I have heard them say versions of it for years. They are wrong. A life does not become small because it is quiet. A house does not belong to the person who can decorate it best. It belongs to the person who knows which stair creaks, which window needs lifting from the left side, which cupboard holds the sugar, and which nights I was afraid to be alone. I had to stop. The words blurred. I could see Grandma in her chair by the window, pretending not to be afraid because she knew I would see it anyway. I continued. I put your name twice because I know they will try to erase it once. Amelia is the woman the law recognizes. Millie is the child who learned to make biscuits in my kitchen and later became the woman who carried my medicine upstairs without sighing. Both of you deserve to inherit. Both of you deserve to be seen. Do not trade what I have left you for peace. Peace that requires your erasure is only silence with better manners. My mother covered her mouth. My father closed his eyes. Celeste sat down slowly, fury and humiliation fighting across her face. The final paragraph was shorter. Keep the house alive. Keep the library open. Let children read in the blue room if you want. Plant lavender by the porch again. And when they laugh at what you wear, remember that I never once saw you poorly dressed when you came wrapped in loyalty. With all my love, Grandma Evelyn. I lowered the letter. No one spoke. Then Celeste said, So that's it? She gets everything because she was available? The cruelty of that word almost made me smile. Available. As if I had been a chair, an appliance, an open calendar. As if love had not cost time, money, sleep, and the slow wearing away of my own life. No, I said. I get what Grandma left me because she wanted me to have it. Celeste looked at our parents. Are you seriously going to allow this? My father rubbed his face. It's the will. Don't act helpless, she snapped. Contest it. Mr. Barlow's voice cut in. Mrs. Rowe included a no contest clause. Anyone who contests the will and loses forfeits their gift. Celeste's mouth opened. That can't be legal. It is enforceable under the circumstances, he said. And given Mrs. Rowe's competency documentation, the clarity of the language, and the witnesses present during execution, a challenge would be difficult. My mother looked at me then, really looked at me, perhaps for the first time that day. Amelia, she said softly, surely you don't need all of it. I almost laughed. Not because it